Hello children, how are you? I hope you all are doing well. So children, we have learnt about different types of plants, we have learnt about the farmers, we have learnt about houses, we have learnt about so many things. Now we are going to talk about the food for plants and animals. Okay, so let's look at the different type of foods. Okay, food that is required by the plants and animals, and from where do they get this food. Alright, so I know I get our food from, and animals get their food from dash and dash both. Alright, so we all know that food is required for all living organisms to survive. Okay, let us discuss food for plants and animals. So every living being or every living organism needs food. Okay, so how is this food prepared in plants? Let's look at that first. Okay, it is prepared through the process called photosynthesis. So we know that plants make their own food by the process called photosynthesis, which in their leaves. Where is the food prepared? In the leaves. Okay, so in this process, the roots of the plant, they absorb the water and minerals from the soil. These are carried by the stem to the leaves. So what happens is, in the very first thing in the process of photosynthesis is that the roots which are there, they absorb the water from the soil. Water, along with the water, they get the minerals from the soil. Okay, उसके बाद जो ये water mineral जो भी होता है वो stem के help से it goes to the leaves. Plants get carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Okay, they breathe in atmosphere and they release oxygen for us. So the green leaves, okay, they have a special substance which is called chlorophyll, and because of this chlorophyll, okay, it helps them to make food from water and carbon dioxide in the presence of sunlight. Okay, that's why leaves are called the kitchen of the plant or food factories. Now, chlorophyll also gives what? It also gives the leaves a color. Okay, it gives their green color to the leaves. Now, the overall process is as follows. Water plus carbon dioxide. Water and carbon dioxide together in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll gives sugar plus oxygen plus water vapor. Okay, so the food that is prepared by the plants is simple sugar in the form of glucose. Oxygen and water vapor are given off in the process. So, जो food prepare होता है plants का वो होता है simple sugar. Okay, जिसका form होता है glucose का form, और oxygen and water vapor are given off in this process. Now, let's see what food does a plant produce. Plants कौन सा खाना produce करते हैं. Okay, at first a plant produces glucose. सबसे पहले तो glucose produce होता है, which is a sugar that contains what? It contains starch and it is stored in various parts of the plant. Starch is a type of carbohydrate. Okay, which gives what? Carbohydrates give us what? They give us energy. तो starch जो होता है वो होता है carbohydrate जो energy देता है plant को. Okay, like all living things, plants also breathe. During the day, okay, during the daytime, they take in oxygen and they give out carbon dioxide. This process is called respiration. The leaves absorb carbon dioxide from the air and sunlight through tiny openings. Now, the leaves के ऊपर tiny openings होते हैं. If you turn the leaf, you will not get to see because they are really very tiny and very minute. So, those tiny openings are called stomata. Okay, they help in the process of making of food. Okay, now, in the daytime, plants release both oxygen during photosynthesis and carbon dioxide during respiration. But at night there is no sunlight and photosynthesis does not take place. So, photosynthesis कब होता है? In the presence of sunlight. Okay. So, plants release only carbon dioxide. Okay. At night plants release कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड. इसलिए कहते हैं ना प्लांट्स के पास मत जाओ, बिकॉज दे आर रिलीजिंग कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड विच इज नॉट गुड फॉर अस. ओके, plants that cannot make food. Now those plants that cannot make food, these are some plants which do not have chlorophyll. जिनमें क्लोरोफिल नहीं होता है, दे डिपेंड ऑन अदर प्लांट्स. वो दूसरे प्लांट्स या एनिमल्स पे डिपेंड करते हैं उनके फूड के लिए. जैसे these plants are called parasitic plants. Most plants make all the food they need by photosynthesis, but some species are called parasites. What happens is they steal food from other plants known as the host plant. तो दूसरे plants से अपना खाना चुरा लेते हैं. Parasitic plants have special suckers that may invade the host plant's food channels and draw off sugars and minerals. Many parasitic plants are totally dependent on their host for their food and they no longer need green leaves. So, ये जो प्लांट्स होते हैं ये दूसरे प्लांट्स पे डिपेंड करते हैं उनके खाने के लिए या दूसरे एनिमल्स पे डिपेंड करते हैं और उनके पास होते हैं एक स्पेशल सकर्स. ओके, जिससे वो दूसरे प्लांट्स पे अटैक कर सकते हैं एंड थ्रू द फूड चैनल्स दे कैन गेट देयर शुगर्स एंड मिनरल्स फ्रॉम देम. ऑलराइट, नाउ मेनी ऑफ दीज प्लांट्स are totally depend on their host for their food and they no longer need any type of green leaves. Okay, example are mistletoe, Indian pine, orchid and mushrooms. Okay, so others still have green leaves and make some of their own food through photosynthesis. Dodder, mistletoe and the Indian pipe, they are some of the parasitic plants. Orchids, rafflesia, mushroom and fungi are the other examples of parasitic plants. Now let's talk about carnivorous or insectivorous plants. So some plants, what happens is they capture small insects, okay, small animals, particularly insects. Now these plants are called carnivorous or insectivorous because they depend on other animals which are small animals which are insects for their food, just like the wild animals depend on other animals in a similar manner. So carnivorous, these plants are green. So they can produce their own carbohydrate food also. But these plants grow in soil which is very poor in nitrogen content. In order to fulfill their requirement of nitrogen, these plants catch insects and digest them with the help of certain chemicals. Examples of carnivorous plants are sundew, Venus flytrap, bladderwort and pitcher plant. Okay, so let's look at sundews. सबसे पहले sundews का क्या होता है? Their leaves जो होते हैं ना, उनके पत्ते जो होते हैं, they are covered with fine hair or tentacles कहते हैं. So when an insect, जब कोई भी insect उन पे ऊपर बैठ जाता है, so the plant traps the insect in its tentacles. उनको trap कर लेते हैं and they digest it to absorb the nutrients. Okay, now what does Venus flytrap do? Okay, the leaves of Venus flytrap, they have long pointed hair on the surface which gets closed when touched. So the upper surface of the leaf has glands which secrete some juices to digest the proteins in the insects. The pitcher plant के जो leaves होते हैं, they are shaped like a pitcher. ओके जो पिक्चर होता है ना ऐसे बॉटल शेप का होता है. ओके सो एज इंसेक्ट्स सिट ऑन द रिम दे गेट ड्रॉन इनसाइड, वो अंदर की तरफ आ जाते हैं एंड इनसाइड द पिक्चर दे आर डाइजेस्टेड विद द हेल्प ऑफ डाइजेस्टिव जूसेस. ओके, ब्लैडरवोर्ट जो होता है, अगर आप पिक्चर प्लांट का फोटो देखो आपको अंदाजा आएगा हाउ इट लुक्स. ओके, एंड देन लेट्स टॉक अबाउट ब्लैडरवोर्ट. They have small sacs or bladders under the water. Okay, when any insect touches the plant, it is immediately sucked into the bladder through a trap door. Okay, food for animals. We know that animals eat both plants and other animals depending on their eating habit. They are herbivores, that is plant eating animals, carnivores, that is flesh eating animals, and omnivores, that means both plants and flesh eating animals. So these are the different types of eating habits of animals. Okay, herbivores, they completely depend on the plants, they eat the plants only. फ्लैश ईटिंग होते हैं कार्निवोर्स, ओके, और ओमनिवर्स जो होते हैं वो दोनों खा लेते हैं, वो प्लांट्स भी खाते हैं एंड फ्लैश भी खा लेते हैं, ओके. नाउ लेट्स लुक एट द फूड चेन. Food chain is an order or sequence showing all animals are directly or indirectly dependent on plants. So plants need sunlight to make food. सबसे पहले तो सनलाइट मिलता है तभी तो प्लांट्स फूड बना लेते हैं. अब grasshopper feeds on grass. The frog eats it. Okay, grasshopper grass खाता है which is a plant. ओके, अब ग्रास हॉपर को कौन खाता है? फ्रॉग. ओके, एंड स्नेक ईट्स द फ्रॉग. सो दिस इज अ फूड चेन, ओके, विच टेल्स यू हु ईट्स whom, right? So if you see, every animal is interdependent on each other, okay? Every plant or animal is interdependent, okay? Now producers कौन होते? Producers are, plants are called producers as they make their own food. They are called producers because they make their own food, so that's why they are known as autotrophs. Consumers, animals कौन होते? Consumers होते because they feed directly on plants or producers. They are also known as heterotrophs. Okay, animals that directly feed on producers are primary consumers. Animals that feed on primary consumers are secondary consumers. Animals that feed on secondary consumers are tertiary consumers. तो यहाँ पे भी देखो आपने animals, एक होते हैं animals जो producers मतलब plants पे depend करते हैं तो उन्हें कहलाया जाता है primary consumers. फिर आते हैं animals जो primary consumers पे depend करते हैं, okay, मतलब they depend on the plant eating animals, okay, they are called the secondary consumers. और तीसरे जो होते हैं वो secondary consumers पे depend करते हैं, they are called tertiary consumers. Okay, so now let's talk about decomposers. When producers and consumers die, okay, मतलब plants and animals, okay, the animals that consume them, they die, they decay, and then they are decomposed by microorganisms. And ये microorganisms जो होते हैं उनको कहलाया जाता है decomposers. Okay, now let's look at the food web. It is the interconnection of more than two food chains. Most of the animals eat more than one kind of food to meet their food and energy requirement. Alright, so if you look at this diagram, you will come to know that how so many things are interdependent on each other. Okay, that's how the food chain works. Now do it yourself. Make a food chain of animals that live in water and find out what happens when all plants get vanished from Earth. Can you imagine? Can we survive? Because the main source, that is food, will not get it. The main source, that is oxygen, it will be so difficult, isn't it? Now remember, plants make their own food by the process called photosynthesis in their leaves. The food prepared by the plants is simple sugar in the form of glucose. Parasites steal food from other plants known as host plants, and some plants can capture insects called carnivorous or insectivorous plants. Food chain is an order or a sequence that shows all animals are dependent directly or indirectly on plants. Food web is the interconnection of more than two food chains. Alright, so children, quickly reread this chapter. I hope now you know how we all are dependent on the different things. Like we are also dependent on plants, we are also dependent on animals. In the similar way, animals are also dependent on plants, and plants are also dependent on us because the moment we eat them, the new plants keep on growing and multiplying. Isn't it? Okay, now before you reread and start doing the back exercises, we'll do the word bank, the new words that we've learned in this chapter. Photosynthesis, that's the process of making food using chlorophyll, sunlight, air and water. Food chain is a sequence that shows how animals are dependent directly or indirectly on plants, and food web is the interconnection of more than two food chains. So children, now quickly run through the chapter and do the exercises.